Hi, my name's Adam Sharp from Restoration Design, and I'm here to give you a short video on how to install the floor pans on the Porsche 914. It's a good idea to put some structure in the door so that the frame doesn't twist. It's a lot of metal that we're taking off the bottom of the car. The second point I'd like to make is your measurements on the top of the car from this corner to this corner need to be correct, and from this corner to the adjacent corner over there. The two critical measurements that we're going to focus on are F, 25 and an eighth, so it would be from this corner to this corner here. And the second measurement we're going to focus on is X, and it's 52 and 5/8, and it's from this corner here to the adjacent corner over there. We're going to take our handy dandy little ruler here, and we're going to measure across from the front windshield frame to the rear frame, and double check to make sure it's 25 and 1/8. The second measurement that we're going to work on is 52 and 5/8, and it's from the adjacent corner of the windshield to the rear frame. Now that we've finished double checking our measurements, you want to just double check and make sure that you've got all the measurements. So you can measure from one corner to the other and then do the same the other way. As you can see, we've already completed the preliminary work. I drilled all the spot welds and removed all the floor pan. We removed the jack points from both sides at the back. As I was removing the floor, I used the new floor pan as a template to cut this front edge of steel here out. Along with the prep work, I also drilled the holes along the center structure and the tunnel for the rosette welds, removed all of the rust, and primed all the bare metal areas with weld-through paint. Just as a side note, it's a good idea to inspect all the inner tubing from the channel to make sure that there is no major damage from rust, because now is a good time to replace them if they need to be replaced. We've also inspected the rest of the steel to make sure that it's all structurally sound. We got pretty lucky with this car. As you can see, we've finished the prep work for our floor pans. I've punched holes along the perimeter for the rosette welds, and I spot welded the seat mount reinforcements on. If you don't have a spot welder available, you can totally drill your holes or punch your holes and do rosette welds along the way. I recommend making sure you have it clamped firmly in place, because the heat from the rosette welds may cause the channel to migrate. Actually, push it to me a little bit. Yeah. Now that we have our floor pans in place, we can go ahead and make our final adjustments on the seam running up the center here. You want to use the butt weld clamps, which can be purchased at any welding supply store or automotive store. The clamp also has a piece in the middle that helps keep the panels evenly spaced apart so that your butt weld has good penetration. Once the clamp is firmly in place, you can then notice that it's nice and even across there, which will give you a nice butt weld. Now that we have all of our butt weld clamps in place, we can go ahead and do our stitching for our butt weld. It's a good idea to put a couple stitches on either side of the clamp, and then you can move the clamp to another area that may be not quite as even. Once you have your panels in place, you can then continue to install the pedal cluster bracket. The pedal cluster bracket needs the pedal cluster installed in place before you can go ahead and figure where your holes are. You want to mount the pedal cluster bracket in place in order to get the two holes that are on the bottom of the floor. Once you have your two holes drilled out for the pedal cluster, you can go ahead and put the pedal cluster bracket in place and mark out the third hole for the gas pedal. Once the third hole for the gas pedal is marked, you can measure down from the hole to get your fourth hole for the gas pedal bracket. We removed the pan and chose to spot weld the bracket on. Of course, once again, you can punch holes and do rosette welds. They work just as well. At the front of the bracket, we have punched two holes where it has to be rosette welded to the original floor. Now that we have our bracket and our seat reinforcements on, next would be the jack support. The jack support gets mounted on the rear corner here. I've chosen to rosette weld in here, and I'm going to do a bead weld along here because of the lack of material on the other side for rosette welds. One of the steps that you might want to do when installing your floor pans is from the inside I put self-tapping screws through to help hold the floor pans securely to the tunnel and the cross member on the inside for the rosette welds. Along the back here, we've used extra clamps to try and keep the panel tight to the existing floor of the car in order to get a nice firm rosette weld in there. One of the key points that you should keep in mind when doing your rosette welds is the steel gets very hot, so it's a good idea to do the welds separate. So you do one weld up here, maybe two welds, and then move 6 to 8 inches away and do another couple welds, and then move again and do a couple, and then you can go back to where you started and do a few more. In addition, you could also use compressed air to help cool the weld down so the steel doesn't migrate. Just like to show you guys that I am keeping my spacing between my welds to try and keep the temperature of the steel down. I'm going to start the stitching of the butt weld of the center joint and the panels. So I'm going to put a couple stitches on either side of each one of the clamps so that I can move my clamps to other areas for proper alignment. I'd just like to make another point about installing the pans. Not every pan is going to fit exactly like a puzzle piece, so there's going to be some hammering required, maybe even some cutting and some trimming. You're going to have to fit it in there nice and neat. In preparation for the jack points to be installed, we need to grind down the area that we put our rosettes on so that the steel sits flat against the other steel. Now to install the jack post mount, we want to put it in place and hold it there with a couple self-tapping screws. Now that we've finished our welding on the bottom of the car, we need to move to the inside and get the rest of those rosettes on the tunnel and the cross member. When welding your tunnel in place, the edges may be curled up, so you'll need to use a hammer to straighten it all out to get your metal nice and tight. Here's what our pans look like installed with all the welding completed and all the welds ground down nice and neat. Don't forget to use seam sealer along all your seams, and we use a lot of weld-through primer between all of our joints of steel that are being welded together. This is just a suggested video. You may need to use alternate methods to install your project. For more videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel with Restoration Design. Thank you.